back at PAX. I'm with Dr. Matt White of Whitethorn Games. How's it going?
Can't complain. How are you doing?
4 days into PAX. Are you still surviving?
I'm upright anyway.
So, I wanted to grab you.
Sure.
Because we have been doing interviews at PAX for the last year, and Whitethorn Games has always been a place that I find has a wide selection of very naturalistic experiences. And I want to know about your approach towards publishing games and finding games and how that all looks from your end.
Sure. Yeah, so the brand, I think a million years ago when someone asked this, I said bisexual, millennial, pastoral escapism, or some combination of those words. But basically,
I mean, you said you're from Erie, Pennsylvania, and I feel like...
the punchline is run away to the woods and smooch. We really
Yes!
we have a brand that offers something that's a little relaxing, a little approachable, a little bit slow. It's not that we don't like high-octane games. I mean, there's millions of them here. We have lots of fun. I've been playing Baldur's Gate lately. I'm going to do Starfield. We like big-budget stuff, obviously.
Yes.
But there's so many options for you if you want to go out and do something that's going to be like adrenaline pumping. You know, if you want to jump out of an airplane, blow something up, fight dragons, there's all these options for you to kind of be big and powerful. There's not all these options necessarily for you to just be kind of soft and relaxed. And I think there's a kind of a yin and yang there, because even, your toughest, biggest dude, whatever, that's all still has times it's just like, you know what, sometimes I just want to sit with a glass of whiskey. And that really is the vibe we're offering people in our publishing. We look for something that's a little decompressing, a little slow, to just offer you an alternative palate cleanser, if you like, to what's usually boom, explode, collect, destroy, fight, conquer.
Yeah.
Just very action-oriented verbs. So everything we do, I mean, we're demoing Calico, which is really just about having squishy interactions with animals, really at its core. I mean,
that's one of our Seattle locals.
Yeah, it's a cat cafe game, but really, it's way less cafe and way more cat. Really, the conceit is interacting with animals in a really pleasant, squishy way. You have Botany Manor over there now.
I like Botany Manor.
Puzzle game about cultivating plants.
It's mist, and it's...
Yeah, plant mist would be a pretty reasonable, and it feels very inviting and warm and relaxing and quiet and serene. And a lot of our brand developed during the isolation of the pandemic. Even Mythrect is one that offers an escape to a pretty desert island because nobody could travel. And so you sort of see the parts of your life that you're longing for, I hope, in our games. And that's what games are, right? I want to be powerful, so you play a game where you're a dragon slaying badass. Or I want to be calmer, though. I want to be more at peace. I want to be more relaxed. That's kind of what we're selling you.
So one of the things that I'm thinking about when I think about the kind of the calm and serenity that you get at Whitethorn Games, when you're working with the game developers, those are also people who are usually very calm and serene. I feel like there might be something difficult about finding those developers.
Oh,
because they're quieter than your average, rambunctious.
Yeah. So I will say if you spend any time at the booth, we have usually today and yesterday, every single person playing a game in our booth is a woman.
Yes.
So one of the very first things we notice about our demographic is it just doesn't look like the rest of our industry's demographic. And so That's the same with our developers, though, actually.
Yeah.
Calico, Botany Manor, and Mythrex over there are in women-led teams, all of them. The director on Mythrex a man, but that is an almost entirely female team. The other two entirely female. And, so our developers look like the audiences they're serving. So that's really where we start looking. So we know we tell queer stories, so we look in the queer community. We know we tell women's stories, so we look through our partners at like Humble and Wings and places that we've worked with in the past to, look for really cool developers that are female. We work with Xbox and their developer acceleration program to find people of color, folks from the developing world, because those narratives more closely match the value orientation that we're trying to provide.
That sounds like a really sustainable pipeline.
Thanks. I hope
a bunch of talent from predictable places.
Yeah.
That you can keep doing this.
Well, they're nice communities. Our company looks that way too. Our board is 75% women. We're all. There's like 4 straight people of the company.
Mm-hmm.
We really, we very much look like by and for the people we're trying to sell games to.
Yeah. From my perspective, as someone who just kind of comes to PAX and sees what your selections are every year, and sees the digital trailers that you put out when it's like, here's a bunch of games that we're doing.
Yeah.
You have a lot of games that you showcase all the time, and so every year I come here and it's like wholly different selection of games.
So I'd say we do like cohorts. I would say 4 or 5 every kind of year.
It almost feels like a graduating class.
That's kind of a nice way to think about it. We're a small company, right? So when we started this 7 years ago or so, it was like literally 3 of us. So the games we could fund were obviously much smaller, right? And so as we grow, so do the games we select. They get more diverse, more expensive, riskier, these kinds of things. Because we're able to leverage a little bit of the earnings from the previous games and try to be a little riskier in the future.
That's always
bigger
the goal.
Bets, Yeah, and a lot of that's Brian, our portfolio director. He's a really smart guy.
Brian of the Forest Cathedral?
That's that guy.
That's really interesting.
Yep. We hired him after he was done with it because he's just very smart. We really enjoyed how
He's very smart. We interviewed him last year about the Forest Cathedral.
I think he's a smart guy. He looks at games in a really interesting way.
That was exactly what I was about to say.
Yeah, kind of gets the value of a game that doesn't necessarily look, it's like maybe a little odd, a little different. I really enjoy it. And we've had a privilege to publish some stuff that's really mind-bendy. We Should Talk doesn't really fit as a narrative game. It's kind of different, interesting. Calico's kind of tough to describe, really. It's, if you say it's a cafe manager, you're going to think about something very different than what Calico really is, right?
Right, I would think of like a Facebook game.
Real
old school.
Yeah, it doesn't really have that heavy management piece. It's really, again, just more about those soft interactions. That's really what's key there. And so those are the moments we're really trying to provide, that nugget of just kind of decompression.
I find a lot of the games at Whitethorn to be naturalistic.
Sure.
About nature, about embodying some kind of experience that's like very tactile.
Yeah. Call these essential experiences. So
tell me about that, essential experience.
Yeah, so there's certain things that are just good, even if you like no other way to put it.
In a morality kind of sense?
No.
In like a philosophical kind of sense?
Just it's like 7 o'clock in the morning, you do not have a cell phone, you are eating good food, and sunlight is hitting your face. There's nothing else completely context-free that is just pleasant.
Yes.
I woke up 10 minutes before I had to, and I know I get to sleep for 10 more minutes. Pleasant.
Right.
Just undiluted pleasantness. And so we're looking for those little moments, and you find many of them in nature, right? Like finding a bunch of baby rabbits in your garden. It's just like a pleasant little vignette, a moment of just being alive. And many of those are found in natural settings. So I think that's kind of natural. You imagine that like the ocean is very beautiful and so forth, and invites contemplation. And so you see something like Mythrex where, there are parts of that game where you can simply just sit and look at a vista. And there's really no game reason to do so. I think a good one lately was Terra Nil that did this. After you actually did all the mechanical cool level building and kind of recycled the state back to nature, at the end there was just an observe where you could just kind of watch.
Right. Yes.
That's what we really advocate for in games. More of those little essential moments that are just like, this is actually kind of just nice, actually.
No, that's cool.
In a very finite way. No explosion, no dragon falling out of the sky, no Star Destroyer crashing into the planet, just birds chirping in the sunlight, man. Like, essential experience. Very small, simple stuff, and that really resonates with our audience. You see that very TikTok TikToked, very Instagrammed, and our audience is very big on those platforms, so it fits well with, I think, also the brand we're trying to sell you.
That kind of coziness.
Yeah, well, and the idea of just simplicity.
Simplicity, yeah. I want to talk about politics.
Yeah, sure.
In a very specific way.
I'll walk the line carefully.
Wholesome Games.
Yeah.
This is a thing that, this is an identity that kind of comes up a lot over the last couple of years, especially from the pandemic.
Yeah.
How does that help you, and how does that work with you? The identity of Wholesome Games as it's grown, and manifested in ways that I think are really interesting, and unlike a lot of other spaces in the industry.
Yeah. So that team's amazing. We've been in their directs and snacks and things a million times. Love them all to death.
Right.
I love that there's a centralized voice for games that don't involve slitting anyone's throat. I mean, I am there for that. I will say I think our overlap is not complete. I think that, for example, like the Forest Cathedral is about being a woman in the 70s dying of cancer, silenced by a sexist enterprise, while DDT drives you mad. So it's really not particularly wholesome, right?
No.
But, neither in some ways, I suppose, is Witchwood. It's kind of spooky. It's still wholesome, but, there's some spooky pieces there. Where the Bees Make Honey is about depression. We Should Talk is about leaving your spouse. There's a lot of stuff we do that isn't really especially wholesome.
Right.
There's much that we do that is, but at the same
you don't
time,
feel limited by a label.
No.
In any kind of way.
There's a pretty decent overlap, and what it means to be cozy doesn't necessarily mean that you're like having a great time. So if I sit down and I read a book, and I'm sitting, and my goal is to really drink tea, drink whiskey, whatever, and blanket up with this book, there's no guarantee that that book is going to be jaunty and fun and sweet, and I might be reading something completely devastating, but in the context of rain and listening and having that essential emotional experience.
Yeah.
So I think for us, Wholesome doesn't capture the whole vibe. And that's not to say that, I want to be clear, again, I love these games. I just think for us as a brand, it's only one little piece of kind of a bigger puzzle of simple, essential, decompressing. Complexity is the biggest fear our audience has, not intimidation. Look at Euphoria. Largely watched, a lot of women watched Euphoria. It's a hugely female-leaning audience. That is not a wholesome show, right?
No.
Nothing about it. But at the same time, the complexity for our audience often is the fear.
That's fascinating dichotomy.
I've been away from games for 20 years, or I have children, or whatever, and I can't commit. Doesn't matter your gender, your sex, whatever. You as the person playing the game, I can't commit 100 hours. I don't want to be made to feel like I'm less or stupid because I've been out of games for a time.
Yep.
And I also don't necessarily want to be yelled at by people who are you're in the wrong lane. Why are you doing mid? You don't even. And it's just all of this baked in complexity tends to be what intimidates our audience away. It's not that the subject material is unwholesome. It's that they just don't have the content area knowledge that the games industry just always assumes you have, that even allow you to perform in something that might be quite, I think the Wholesome Games community from the outside, when gamers see it, I think they very much fall back on that stupid sexist trope of it's games for girls, women want soft shit, women aren't competitive, all of that sexist crap.
Yeah.
And I think that's very much not the case. I think it's that women and queers and folks that are disabled, etc., have largely been intentionally kept out of the audience to get the content knowledge in the first place. And so the simplicity is what we come up with. We don't necessarily theme anything, we just make it so that grandma's a toddler, you can walk up and play.
That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
At least for everything that I've seen. And I think that Body Manor is actually a pretty good indication of it, because it is a game that has this looming feeling to it.
Yeah.
Even though there's nothing in the text or anything just jump scare you or anything, but you're alone in the house.
It's just imposing by size,
Just by size, just in kind of the same way Myst does. They play into that.
Yep.
Where your only friends are, books that you're picking up, plants, and little photos on the walls that you're trying to get clues and information from.
Plants make great friends. They're very communicative, expressive. They don't play any games with you.
They don't. They're simple. They're not trying to be complex.
Excellent friends.
Any anything new coming from Whitethorn that we should
Yeah,
be
I
looking out
mean, you
for?
certainly can check out the booth. The 3 that we're demoing, like we mentioned a few times, are Botany Manor, Magical Delicacy, and Mithrect. All, again, offer a little bit of simple escapism.
Are those all
moments of
coming out
silence.
soon? I know
Yeah,
Calico has an
all are
expansion.
next year, so
Cool.
they'll be seasonal next year. Stay tuned for the updates, but all are due next year, yes.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the time.
Yeah, of course.
And have a great rest of PAX.
Appreciate it.